Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I request our esteemed guests who are taking refreshments right now kindly to come in the main hall. We are going to start with the session in next 5 to 7 minutes, please. Ladies and gentlemen, in the refreshment area, I request you all to kindly come to the main hall. We are going to start with the proceedings in the next 5 minutes. Please. Good morning, everyone. We welcome you all to the 12th CII Bioenergy Summit 2024, Fueling the Future, Securing India's Green Growth Goals. Thank you, everyone, for taking out time and joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that bioenergy is transforming the global energy landscape, making its contribution to climate change mitigation central to the energy transition theme. We have an array of carefully curated sessions today where we will discuss the impact of biofuels on economic growth, supply chain complexities, role of biofuels in enhancing sustainable development goals, biofuels in sustainable mobility, and challenges in mobilizing investments along with the transformative potential of sustainable aviation fuel as a key driver for decarbonizing the aviation sector. We all look forward to engaging sessions with you all and our esteemed speakers. With this, not taking any time further, I welcome you all to the first session on navigating supply chain complexities, strategies for a sustainable future. Please join me in welcoming on stage Mr. Suhas Bakshi, co-founder and chief executive officer, Biofuels Circle, and moderator for this session. Mr. Bakshi. Thank you, sir. Mr. Sanjeev Chopra, Secretary, Department of Food and Public Distribution, Ministry of Consumer Affairs and Food and Public Distribution. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. G. Sridhar, Director General, Sardar Swaran Singh National Institute of Bioenergy. Mr. Sridhar. Thank you, sir. Mr. Vivek Taneja, Vice President and Business Head, Reliance Industries Limited. Mr. Taneja. Thank you, sir. Mr. Varun Karad, Chief Executive Officer, R Energy Dynamics. Mr. Karad. Thank you, sir. Mr. Amit Sachdev, Consultant, US Grains Council, India. Mr. Sachdev. Thank you, sir. Mr. Sashank Joshi, Managing Director, Neste India. Mr. Joshi. Thank you, sir. I would now invite Mrs. Soma Banerjee, Deputy Director General, Confederation of Indian Industry, to please come up on the stage and welcome our guests, please.
Thank you, Megha. Good morning, everyone, and a big welcome to all of you. Also a great welcome and my thanks for all the people who have actually spared time and come here for the session. I just like to share a few words and then start the session. As you see, this is our 12th edition of the Bioenergy Summit, which only makes it clear that we started the journey much earlier than many. CII actually had begun the work on bioenergy much even before the country actually took bioenergy so seriously. However, we are happy to be a part of this journey, and today we are looking at the Global Bio Summit, which the government has done in the G20, and we are now a part of the global story. This industry has been a part and parcel of this journey. We have helped in formulation of policies, also helped in actually adopting technologies, which is a very big part of this energy form. As we all know, bioenergy not only impacts the energy guys, it's also a very direct link to our farm sector, which is a large part of our agrarian economy. This is perhaps the only non-carbon energy sector which has such large implications across the society and the ecosystem. India, which has already taken a march ahead in the international energy sphere, as we've seen with the International Solar Alliance and now with the Global Biofuel Alliance, we are going to be marching ahead. And thank you for the leadership that we have got in CII to really work on this agenda. CII, as you all know, is an industry association. We have over 9,000 membership, and we are spread across 64 centers in India with 7 overseas offices. Without wasting any more time, I'll now turn over to Megha to please announce and get the session started. Thank you very much again.
Thanks for the introduction, ma'am. With this brief introduction, I would like to hand over the floor to the moderator of the session, Mr. Suhas Bakshi, co-founder and chief executive officer, Biofuels Circle, to set the context and take the session forward. Sir, the floor is yours, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session. We have quite an array of specialists and stakeholders in this industry. My own introduction to this sector and reason to participate in this supply chain was driven by what I would call as 3 U's. The fact that the supply chain is unorganized, the fact that supplies are unpredictable, and the fact that in the end, this could lead to unreliability. How do we convert a phenomenally large opportunity to an industrial scale and reliable supply chain so that our country and overall effort towards transition to green economy, they get sustained? Was the reason why I started participating in this supply chain. I am myself continuing to be a student of what needs to work in the supply chain and looking forward to the thoughts that everybody wants to share here. We would want to start this session with an address from Mr. Sanjeev Chopra. Sir, I would like to invite you to the stage and share your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bakshi, the eminent panelists, all the dignitaries among the audience, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege for me to be a part of this Bioenergy Summit, which I'm told has been going on for a long time. And this particular sector has gained importance in the recent past. And it is something that is the need of the time. I had a visit to Brazil last week, and I'll share with you my impressions about what Brazil has been doing. They've been the leaders in this sector for the past almost 50 years now. But let me come to that later. Biofuels, which is a critical component of the entire sector, the recent happenings, I think, are known to all of us, but I think probably it bears repetition. What's happening over the past few years has been, it's evolving as a sector. As Mr. Bakshi mentioned, he's a student, so I am a student myself, although I've been in this sector for the past 2 years, but still there's so much to learn. And I think every day one gets to know so much of these intricacies of the sector. The event has an array of dignitaries who are going to be addressing this particular event in course of the day, and I'm sure that the insight that they will share will be extremely useful as we go along in the policy-making sphere in the months and years to come. So if I talk about this year, so as of 30th of June 24, we've had a blending of about ethanol blending program, if I begin with, has been quite a success. We are aware, going from 1.5% blending in the year 2013-14 to what we are striving to achieve this year to 15% and 20% next year. It's a tall order indeed, and I think it's a success story that needs to be told and retold. Many countries, when we attend these meetings at the international fora, they are amazed at the fact that how soon and how fast have we achieved this blending percentage, which seemed unachievable a few years back. So out of the, so we are doing about 15% blending now since the month of May this year. And if I talk of the figures of 30th of September 24, we have done about 585 crores of blending, crore liters of blending. And what is actually surprising, or one can say it is something that we didn't expect a couple of years back, is the rising share of the grain sector. So out of the 585 crores liter blending, about 330 crore liters have come from grain, out of which 230 crore liters have come from maize. So this seemed unachievable and maybe something that was not possible just a couple of years back or even a year back, but I think it's a great achievement of the industry and the conducive policy ecosystem which has made it happen. We are striving to achieve 20%, for which again there needs to be the right policy system in place, which the government is of course trying to provide. So the second point I'd like to mention is with regard to the fact that the states which are actually becoming now self-sufficient in ethanol, so that's now going up. The numbers are quite impressive. So states like UP, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Punjab, Haryana, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh are surplus states, and more states are going to join this particular category in the coming years. So what actually I'd also like to mention is the fact that for the food grain distribution, we've done a supply chain optimization or a route optimization, which ensured that leveraging the PM Gati Shakti, you've seen the papers today and how is the 3rd anniversary and how we are now showcasing PM Gati Shakti as something that we can now offer to the other parts of the world as something that they can use for infrastructure planning. So route optimization that we have attempted using PM Gati Shakti for the food grain distribution, where we have achieved substantial cost savings, I would say, because of the fact that there were routes which were uneconomical or unviable, or routes that were traditionally being followed without actually any kind of a revisiting the rational reasons for adopting these routes. So that has given us substantial cost savings, which we are estimating to be about 250 crores per annum. So similar thing we are also suggesting that we do for the ethanol supply chain. There is no point in actually burning fuel to supply fuel. So this again is an effort that we will be taking up, so that the route optimization even in ethanol distribution is something that we are able to factor in. So that diversification of feedstock is something which I spoke about, and I think that needs to be highlighted once again, because this sector needs to be de-risked from some of the shocks which sometimes appear. We saw one shock last year where some things had to be done because of keeping in view the food security of the country, keeping in view the fact that, first of all, the human consumption has to take priority. So, as I said, to de-risk that, we need to diversify, and the government has been giving the policy signals to ensure that that particular diversification happens, and keeping in view the fact that we are now aiming for 20% blending next year. I think the scope is such that there is adequate room for different kind of feedstocks. And maize is something that the government has been stressing on, and recently, if you would have read in the papers in the month of August, the Honorable Prime Minister launched about 109 new varieties of seeds, out of which 6 were from maize. And why maize is important is that while for maize we are having an average production of about 350 lakh tons every year, the effort is to actually make it 450 in the next 3 years. And we are hopeful that as we end this year, 24-25, we would have about 400 lakh tons of production of maize. That would ensure that the pressure which is felt by the industry, whether it is ethanol, whether it is the distilleries, or whether it is the feed industry, that particular pressure is reduced to a certain extent. The one low-hanging fruit for the maize cultivation is the fact that in India we are having an average yield of about 3 tons per hectare of maize. If you look at US has more than 10 tons yield per hectare. So the high-yielding varieties which have been introduced, 6 varieties were introduced or launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in the month of August. And these six varieties have yields going up to 9 tons per hectare. And this would ensure that in case we are able to just increase the yield by having some replacement of the seeds, at least 10 to 20% over the next 2 years, that itself would give a big leg up to the kind of production that we are seeing of maize in the country, and that would ensure that the industry, the distilleries have adequate stocks of maize available for the ethanol production. Besides India, if you go to the other biofuels, India is also encouraging compressed biogas production, which can be seen as another initiative to reduce the GHG emissions. We are striving to achieve 5% blending of CBG with CNG by 2029. This will help in reducing discharge of effluents as well as the burning of crop residue in India. Thus, CBG will help in better waste management, greener gases as fuels, and also generation of additional revenue for the Indian farmers. The Global Biofuel Alliance, which was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister last year as part of the G20 presidency of India, has grown stronger, and many countries are now joining the alliance to promote greener and cleaner fuel. 27 countries and 12 international organizations have already joined the Global Biofuel Alliance, and this will pave the way for adoption of biofuels as an alternative to fossil fuels. Besides, on our part, we are also working to set up a Center for Excellence in Biofuels. There's a Institute for Sugar, the National Sugar Institute at Kanpur, which has tied up with the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and that particular center is coming up, and that will ensure that the research which is required in the sector, biofuels, is taken up by this center. Now, coming to the point that I made earlier of my having visited Brazil last week and got some kind of learnings from there, let me now turn to that. And Brazil, of course, has been the front runner, which started the biofuel program sometime in 1976, and have the capacity to produce 35 billion liters of ethanol compared to about 16.5 billion liters of ethanol production capacity that we have. And by the way, coming to the ethanol production capacity, in case we are aiming for 20% ethanol blending next year, for that, the estimate is that we need about 1,700 crore liters of capacity for producing ethanol, assuming 20% capacity utilization and assuming that we'll also need that for industrial use. So already we have achieved about 1,650 crore liters of capacity. So that just speaks volumes of the fact, something that I thought when I joined the department, that will happen sometime in the year 2025. That has already happened, and by the time we end 2024, we'll have more than 1,700 crore liters of ethanol capacity, production capacity in the country. So from the side of the supply side, I think there is no constraint, and I think 20% blending seems eminently feasible. Of course, we need to ensure that the adequate feedstock is available to the sector. Coming back to Brazil, let me just mention a few points about what I observed. So Renova Bio in Brazil was launched in 2017 as a robust carbon accounting scheme for biofuels, providing additional incentives for the biofuel producers to further decarbonize the production processes and also provide Brazilian oil companies a formal and traceable mechanism for claiming carbon reductions and support Brazil's carbon goals under the Paris Agreement. As a result, Brazil has reduced emissions of more than 400 million tons of fossil fuel and distribute the resultant benefits to the entire value chain. It was very heartening to see that in Brazil, flexi-fuel vehicles have become a cornerstone of the country's biofuel strategy, with approximately 90% of the total vehicles now running in Brazil are running on flexi-fuel. This has happened on the back of differential pricing of ethanol, thus incentivizing the consumer to adopt biofuels. So the pumps in Brazil have a dispenser where you can get ethanol, which is almost which is almost 95% ethanol, and another the normal fuel, which is E27, which is the default kind of blending that they have in the country. Now, the vehicles are designed to operate on any blend of gasoline and ethanol, giving the choice to the consumer to choose the flex fuel that suits their economic and environmental consideration that they may have. This flexibility has played a significant role in the widespread adoption of biofuels, offering both cost savings and reduced carbon emissions. Additionally, hybrid electric vehicles are gaining traction in Brazil, especially in the urban centers. Brazil also provides a level playing field in terms of tax treatment to the FFVs and the battery electric vehicles. They've just introduced a prototype of a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, which I had the occasion to also have a test drive, which would ensure that if you are plugging in the vehicle, you have about 50 to 100 kilometers of running capacity, after which you can move to flex fuels, and it could also move to the electric supply as and when the requirement is there. So the combination of electric and biofuel-powered engines offers a sustainable mobility solution, capitalizing on the country's robust ethanol production while reducing dependence on fossil fuels. The dual approach of promoting FFVs and HEVs, hybrid electric vehicles, position Brazil as a leader in integrating renewable energy sources into the transportation sector, further driving its decarbonization goals. Due to Renova Bio, ICAO, the International Center for International Civil Aviation Organization, accepts a Brazilian carbon intensity number for ethanol to sustainable aviation fuel production from sugarcane, allowing Brazilian feedstock to be accepted to meet the CORSIA blending mandates, CORSIA being carbon offsetting and reduction scheme for international aviation. In the absence of the same in India, we currently have to adhere to global average CI numbers, and therefore most of our feedstock is unable to meet the CORSIA benchmarks of carbon reductions and qualify as SAF. While I was there in Brazil, they passed a future fuels law last week. Is a milestone globally for biofuels, where the basic blending target is increased to 30% from 27% by 2027. This law also provides an enabling ecosystem for increasing the production of sustainable aviation fuel, 2G ethanol, compressed biogas, as well as green hydrogen and ethanol-based marine fuel. So these were the few observations I had of my visit to Brazil. And of course, what we are now going to see from beyond 20%, what is going to happen to the ethanol blending program, what will happen into biofuels. It is something that the government is still working on. The roadmap post 25-26, post 20% blending is still in the works, and I'm sure that the conference that we are organizing today by CII will give adequate food for thought, and I'm sure that the observation and findings of the panelists will be immensely useful to the government in shaping the new policy that we will have beyond 25-26. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chopra, sir, thank you very much. I think the range of topics that you covered in a very short time, starting with India's ethanol program, talking about how do you bring in logistics efficiency in the supply chain, going all the way to farmer income around CBG, and then in the end, incentivization and global benchmarks that you saw in Brazil, which could be probably, a lead for us to follow. I think it covers a whole spectrum of issues, and I'm sure all the panelists will have some view or the other on that. As you can see on the stage here, we have an array of panelists here, starting with Reliance, who is one of the largest CBG developers, to Neste, a global player, looking at India as a supply chain for their global supplies. And all of us have something or the other as a thought on bioenergy supply chain. What I would like to do is, I would like to pass on a question to each one of the panelists. And the question is essentially about what is their current experience in India vis-a-vis the bioenergy supply chain, and what is the impact of the current policy framework that they see on the supply chain. So why don't we start with you, Vivek, and maybe seek an answer to this question from your perspective.
Thanks, Suhas. Yeah, I think with Ms. Chopra put in the context in the right place. And I think we have a daunting target as a country for decarbonizing ahead of us, and we obviously need multiple levers to get to that. And I think it's slowly seeping in that bioenergy will play a very, very important role. And within bioenergy, again, the way I look at it is that the way ethanol has set a trend, compressed biogas probably will be the next solar, the way it is in the entire framework. And fortunately, I think the policies that have been set up by the government have been fairly, progressive, and they have been showing a very positive move ahead. However, I think as a developer, from a developer's perspective, any developer would look at finally the returns. What is it that he can make out of it when he puts in his money? And when you look at any sector, you are talking about two things, which are the input cost as well as output cost. In the input cost, of course, feedstock plays a very important role. And then when you look at feedstock, it starts from what is the cost at the farm to till the time it is delivered to the plant. Whether it's the logistics cost, whether it's a warehousing cost, whether it is the insurance cost that will be there while it is, in the transit collection center. Because let's face it, I think biofuels, basically starting from agro residues, if you take it, especially when you look at stubble burning issue, it has a very small portion. In just 30 to 40 days, you have to collect for the entire year, and it has to be delivered to the plant over the next 300 plus days. That means probably warehousing and logistics plays a very, very important role. And fortunately for that perspective, the government has done quite a bit with their, policies of CRM for BAM and a couple of other policies that have been declared. However, I think they still needs, it's a emerging sector, let's face it, we are all learning, and I think we have set a right trend. I think fine tuning is what needs to be done. From our perspective, I think it's been a fair amount of learning last 2 years in terms of setting up the collection centers, discussing with various aggregators, doing our own bit. Yes, it's multiple challenges that we have come across. We are learning along the way. As I said, number of things that have worked our way, a few things which will need fine tuning based on our learning perspective. One of the main thing is, of course, how to bring the warehousing and the logistics cost to the minimum, and also ensuring that there is a supply chain, because it's something which is fraught with a lot of what I would call weather issues, the entire sector. So how do you ensure those weather conditions? How do you ensure that, during high monsoons, during other clot, you have a consistent supply of feedstock? Those are some requirements that our developer would have.
So, as we speak now, one actually sees examples of what I would broadly call as theory of constraints playing out in the farms around northern India. You have an extended monsoon, which has gone right till the first week of October. You know that the window that is available to you for removing stubble from the fields has shortened. You've put in significantly large array of equipment for aggregation. You've got large number of warehouses which are out there, but somewhere down the line, making sure that you collect the entire years of requirement in a 15 to 45 day window is becoming the problem that industry is trying to solve. So on this note, I would like to move to you, Varun, because you're in the middle of trying to solve this problem. What's your experience, and especially with respect to the policy framework, and what are your expectations from it?
Thanks, Suhas, sir, for having me over here. I think it's a very valid question you've asked. We, Renergy Dynamics as a company, we are a fairly young company, and we are focusing on aggregation apart from doing technology plus EPC for large players like Reliance. And what we've realized, the major challenge still over here is aggregation. If you talk to me from a perspective of a project developer, which Vivek sir will agree, there is three things one has to solve. The first one is what's happening with aggregation. The second one is technology plus EPC. And the third one is offtake. So coming to the policy part, the government has given you incentives or the sector the incentives for the offtake. There is incentives for technology to come in right now. The last part over here, or the first most crucial part, is aggregation. I think in terms of aggregation, we tried our hands, we got our hands, I would say, dirty or green last year. We were able to collect, our target was to collect 20,000 tons of paddy straw. We were able to collect only 13,000 tons, and exactly for the same reason, because the monsoons were late, and the farmers did not wait for us to aggregate or collect the feedstock. To give you a simple example, a 20 tons per day plant requires approximately around 50,000 tons of paddy straw to be collected in one season, which is around 30 to 35 days maximum. Now, to do this, one has to aggregate over almost, if it's in UP or other states, almost over 50,000 acres of land one has to go and aggregate this feedstock from. Imagine the scale of this operation, and doing this in a new state like UP, maybe MP, or even further when you go towards other states like Orissa, it's a challenge. We have realized that the only way you can aggregate this is by having a very large fleet of aggregation machinery. And this is where we think that policy intervention is required. Today, there is a subsidy available for aggregation machinery, but only for project developers who own CBG plants or for farmers who are directly aggregating. And this is missing out a very large chunk of entrepreneurs like myself and like you, Suhas sir, who is purely focusing on aggregation business. Now, this is where I think if the government tries to focus slightly more and helps us take this machinery at a better rate, which will, of course, ensure that we're able to aggregate the feedstock, might promote this entire sector. I think it's that time of the year wherein the entire country will again awaken to news talking about how people are falling sick, everyone's kids up, the schools will be shut down, the NGT will come into action, the Supreme Court will come into action, and like last year, in the next 40 days, we will all come back, go back to living our lives in a normal way. Energy Dynamics this year has decided that we will take an action. We have launched a few business models in the country wherein we are actually helping farmers to try out this entire leasing model of machineries wherein they can come to us, they can lease the machinery from us to see how aggregation can be done, and if they think it is the correct way, maybe then they can invest. We are doing our bit. I hope everyone over here does their bit by figuring out what's the correct way to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Varun. I think that was very, very well said. I would probably add a small dimension to it and say that there is probably a need for identification of biomass supply chain or bioenergy supply chain as a sector in itself, because there has to be significant investment that needs to happen to propagate this. And I think that brings me to an entirely different supply chain, which is a global supply chain, which has been set up and promoted by companies like Neste around the world. And that's the used cooking oil supply chain. And it's not just about used cooking oil, but how do you create supply chain for sustainable oils or fuel oils which are being manufactured by oil companies around the world. And no one better than Shashank Joshi to actually talk about it. Shashank leads Neste in India. So Shashank, what are your views on this?
Thank you firstly, Suhas, for this opportunity and introduction. So as you rightly mentioned, Neste brings with it an experience of setting up global supply chains, and if I reflect that onto the policies in India, I think the Global Biofuel Alliance is something that we really look upon as a very, very welcome step, because it truly recognizes the global nature of supply chains, and that's something that really we welcome as a policy intervention. Having said that, and also giving you a glimpse into the kind of feedstocks that Neste largely relies on, is something that can be classified as a waste and residue supply chain on one end, and of course we do work with our R&D departments to constantly innovate the kind of feedstocks that we use. But if I were to take a step back and talk about the waste and residue supply chain, as you rightly mentioned, used cooking oil is a big component of that. And the biggest case study that we have today in front of us is another developing economy like China, which in all parameters in terms of input is very, very comparable to India in terms of population, in terms of consumption habits, in terms of the economic variables that dictate it. And very surprising to note, an interesting statistic that I shared, while the amount of veg oil that both these countries use is roughly equal, the used oil collection that happens in India is less than 0.5% of what China is able to generate. And I think that is one very big policy intervention that we would want to look at, because as we all have seen in the past, there are ICMR reports which talk about the hazardous nature of used cooking oil and what it does as an impact to the public health. And of course, the overall nature of how it can be transformed into something as crucial and as beneficial as a biofuel is something that Neste has proven as part of its patented technology. So that is something that we definitely look at. But having said that, we always have seen a favorable business environment when it comes to looking at promoting the collection of feedstocks like this and the other aspects of it. If I talk about the novel vegetable oils, which are some new areas that we explore, We are working with partners in India who are specifically working with rural communities and looking at developing tree-based oils, again, which fall under the ambit of novel vegetable oils. And this, in a way, is also looking at how we can work with the larger rural economy and try to promote the use of these oils in our overall supply chain. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And you know, the thought that I kind of carry from you is how important it is to create level of awareness so that participation happens. I mean, you're talking about 0.5% vis-a-vis what China creates as used cooking oil supplies. Now, that's not just an opportunity which has to be tapped, but that opportunity needs to be sustained, and that requires significant amount of information, awareness creation, education, etc. And I think that probably brings us, and we can dovetail this question to the work that your organization is doing, Amit, and that is in the area of information, data, and awareness about you know, crops that can ultimately lead to creation of biofuels. Your thoughts, especially in the context of India.
Thank you, Mr. Bakshi. Thanks to CII for inviting. Great question, sir. I think what we bring on the table as US Grains Council is the information that gets generated or the experience that gets generated from the US side. Just came back from the US, and at this point of time, harvest is on. So corn is being harvested. The current, and to Sir's point, Mr. Chopra's point, productivity, to Mr. Vivek's point, movement of material and storage of material. I think these are the three things that are very, very important. So average productivity in the US is about 11.48 metric tons per hectare. The farm that we visited around, average was 13 plus. And I'm only talking about averages right now. So we have a long way to go from here. Everything is not lost. Sir said, Prime Minister Modi has put in new seeds, productivity up to about 9 metric tons, fantastic. But in Kharif, our productivity is much, much lower. Our average is 3 point plus. So Rabi crop produces more corn, or our productivity is much higher, but Kharif is much lower. So we'll have to look at new seeds that will produce an average good quality corn for us. Second point is the movement of corn, which happens in India, is everything in bags, which adds to the cost. For last so many years, we have not seen movement of material in bags in the US for last maybe 50 years. A farmer would move the material, everything in bulk. So look at the cost of that moving that material in bulk. And all the storage also happens in bulk. So there is no movement or storage in bags at all. The cost implications are huge. Second point comes is, during that period, when we are storing the material in bags, what is the moisture level and what is the wastage that happens? If there is aflatoxin in your maize that you are buying for your biofuels plant, then obviously the aflatoxin content becomes into 3 in your DDGS, which is part of the food chain now, which goes into poultry and the dairy sector. I think we have to work in all these segments to make sure the quality that we buy for the biofuel sector is good quality. I think that's very, very important. Looking at the cost structure, I think another factor, Indian corn today is at 27 rupees. US corn today at the farm point is 13 rupees. Price of DDGS in the US is 108% of corn. In India, it is 50% of corn value. So there are things that are possibly we can do. But again, going back, there are things that have already happened. Thanks to the initiatives by the government, companies have come forward and are moving material in UP, collecting the material in bulk, moving the material in bulk, storing the material in bulk. But these are one-off examples. I think the industry needs to come together and look at how these things can happen across the value chain. I think that's very important.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very interesting thought. We do have a small change in the way we had organized ourselves. Mr. Chopra has to leave urgently, so we would wish to thank you, sir, for coming here, taking your time out and sharing your thoughts. I'm sure it will go a long way in shaping our own thought process around it. Thank you very much. So, the thought that you shared about especially the industrial scale bulk handling, not just logistics, but storage, how does it help us reduce costs and become competitive at a global level is something which is a point to be pondered. But, if one has to take a thread, across the thoughts that were expressed by everybody, it then comes down to institutionalization of knowledge, creating larger share of knowledge and information, and probably end up creating a bunch of experts in time to come. And I think nobody, once again, better than you, sir, Mr. Shriram, to tell us more about what your institution is doing and what's your view of the sector.
Thank you, Bakshi, for having invited me to this summit. I think CI has taken, I would like to congratulate them for having introduced this topic of navigating of supply chain, this thing. So essentially, I represent an institution called Sardar Swaran Singh National Institute of Bioenergy, which is one of the autonomous institutions of Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And we are working on R&D topics related to bioenergy and bioproducts. So supply chain is also one of the components which we are working. Like you, I think it's been mentioned earlier by you and also by Mr. Chopra that we need to diversify into the different fuels, what we are looking at. So if you look into biofuel production, right now we may be doing 1G ethanol, maybe we are soon move to 2G ethanol and some of those things, for which we need to look at agro residues and some of those things. So if you look at the supply chain as such, to establish supply chain management, you need to have both the demand and supply. Demand is already established because of several programs of various ministries of government of India. And the supply chain, basically what we have done is, we have developed something called as National Biomass Atlas for the entire country, where we have appropriate data at the state level and also the crop level. So one would, and this is freely available, it can be downloaded from our website. So from this website, one would get a primary information on the different types of biomass that is available at the state level. So going forward, we are also going to update this and also update it at the district level and some of those things. So having these things in place, so there's the next step, what we thought is to look into supply chain management as such. So in fact, we had an interesting seminar last month in the month of September in Chandigarh, and wherein we got good response from various quarters, including from the policymakers, industries, and then academics and so on. So we could gather a lot of information at the grassroots level. What are the typical challenges that would be there in the supply chain management? And what we understand is that with several of the programs, policies, and intervention of the government of India, like the aggregation, the harvesting aggregation is being looked into, but there are several other areas which needs attention. For instance, if you look at storage is one important thing. There are several aspects relating to storage, such as safety and some of those things. What we understand from the industry is that there are instances during the summer where it catches fire. So there are issues which need to be addressed. And moreover, and many of times these biomass are light, dry, and also it's vulnerable to fire and some of those things. So these are the aspects which require some attention. Likewise, if you look at the current supply chain management, the way it is done at the industrial scale and discrete way. Suppose you want to spread it pan-India across, then we need to also identify where would be the lands available for storage of biomass. So whether is it possible at the village or panchayat level to get land at subsidized rates. And also what we understand during the seminar is that there are issues even for banks because they do not want to provide loans because there are risks involved in this in terms of the storage and some of those things. So this is where we think we can, as an academic institution, we can jointly work with industry and develop models, particularly mathematical models, using some of the advanced tools like the AI ML tools, where we can see how we can optimize the supply chain such that the cross competition for biomass is reduced, and we can identify both the supply and the demand accordingly. Thank you.
That's a wonderful thought that you shared, sir, especially when it comes to the fact that this needs to scale nationally, number one. Number two, you need to create systems which help you optimize demand, supply, cost of logistics, nature of storage, introducing mathematical models and AI to make sure that in the end, we're able to do it in a manner whereby it becomes cost optimal. We are able to gain competitiveness, which could become global competitiveness. So I think all of this, dovetails very well. So we now have another 15 minutes of, thought sharing time, vision sharing time, I would say. Once again, when we as a company decided to get into this business and this sector, for us, the vision was there is 235 million metric tons of agricultural residue. We have an ability to convert 18% of fossil fuel requirements into green fuels. And clearly the challenge is supply chain, clearly the challenge is on the rural side, how to create businesses which are industrial scale businesses, which are going to be competitive and help India achieve this transition. For our company, we set some targets, and some of the things that you said, Mr. Sridhar, were part and parcel of it. How do you drive participation through incentivization? How do you create a cost structure which becomes competitive? And how do you create a supply chain which is year-long and is going to be reliable? Is something which was at the crux of our thought process. Now, if one has to look at it from a point of view of your own organization's vision, in terms of where do you see this supply chain moving 5 years from now, and what needs to be done for doing that, what would be your thoughts on that? And I would probably take the same question to each of the organizations from a supply chain perspective. We could start exactly the same way.
Thanks, Suhas. I think very aptly put, that supply chain portion, of course, we are talking about, as I said, let's not limit ourselves only to the feedstock portion, because I think in the entire value chain, of course, the logistics and, supply chain plays an important role, both from the input side as well as on the output side. So that's one portion. And when it comes down to using AI and other tools, I think to make, entire supply chain more optimal, I think there is a big room to play in that. And I think when we talked about initially, warehousing plays a very important role. And how do we ensure that warehousing, Dr. Sridhar pointed out on the safety aspect, and I think no better person than Varun to have, experienced the safety issues that I know of. So yes, it is a feedstock which is prone to catching fire. So in the warehousing portion, how do you ensure the safety parameters? And secondly, I think when you are talking about getting land parcels at a low lease rent, to create these centers where you have to collect the feedstock for the entire year, what sort of insurance packages that financial institutions or insurance companies come in specifically for this sector? Because this is one sector which has got a huge impact on the social economics. It's one of the renewable energy sector which has got amazing amount of impact when it comes down to whether the rural economy or the socio-political issues. And I think getting that the annadatas to become real urja datas for us, how to ensure that when this feedstock, which could be agro-residue, is kept in a more safe manner and also at the least cost. So the warehousing itself. Now, if we spoke in the morning, even if you get a low lease rent for setting up a warehouse, but if you were to go through the entire set of safety parameters and all the other paraphernalia, you need to have a high demand of power connected. And the moment, as per the current policies, the moment you go for a 3-phase connection into the rural belt, you're no longer an agricultural entity. You become a...
And it becomes cost prohibitive.
Yeah, so you come into the industrial domain. and then you're paying the pricing, for that. It adds up. So these are some, very important policy perspective which the policymakers need to look at. That this is the agricultural sector. Let's take it as an extension to agricultural sector. And all the benefits of agricultural sector needs to be, extended to setting up such warehouses or what I call it as a transit collection centers. Apart from that, of course, we talked about, the farm machinery. The farm machinery, the BAM and the CRM schemes that have been talked of, they have helped a lot in getting the cost down because there's a fair amount of subsidy. As Varun pointed out, it is only to the CBG players that it is extended. But however, no large CBG player would want to, they would want partners like you and others who have to be there. How do we extend those benefits to those partners? And, why limit such schemes to only, say, a developer? Why not extend those benefits to the other partners associated? These are some pertinent thoughts that I think will go a long way in bringing the supply chain and making it more optimal.
So rural logistics, rural warehousing, supply chain as business is clearly part of your vision. Varun, where do you come?
I think Vivek sir has raised a very important point over here. But we have one beautiful thing which works for everyone, which is the market, right? Let the market forces decide. And what is happening over here is we as an industry have to understand the real price of biomass, which somehow the project developers are not able to understand, or maybe they will realize at a later stage. Just to give you some numbers, it's very easily possible to aggregate a feedstock, let's say parali or paddy straw in Punjab, for around 1800 rupees per ton. That's just the aggregation cost on spot. But the moment you add other stuff like storage, precaution to ensure it doesn't get burnt, I have seen fires on my stockyard and it was the worst thing ever, right? So when you add that cost, the cost of transportation, that cost is somewhere near, I would say, for around 4,000 rupees or so. Now, that is a true cost of feedstock or parali for you to generate CBG. Now, it's a larger thought process which we as a sector should also maybe try and push, is that how for ethanol do you have a different price point? So ethanol from sugarcane might be a different price point, from rice will be a different price point. Why not have a similar thing for CBG as well? CBG from agri-biomass can have a different price point because CBG or biomethane from paddy straw will give you a different output, or CBG, you'll have a different output from that feedstock, or you might have a different output from, let's say, cotton stock, or you might have a different output from, let's say, corn stock. So having a differential price for differential feedstock can maybe solve this challenge. One last point is we have to extend the subsidies for farm machineries to aggregators like ourselves over here, because we are the ones who are actually taking in the risk of taking all the loans on our head. When you think about us, we will be in a better position to operate those machineries because we do have some scale. We can take them, let's say, from starting to Punjab, we can take them to down south as well and try and extend the usage of not just 30, 40 days, but try and take them to 100 days, which will actually make this sector work. So just these are some thoughts, but I think two things again. Subsidies should be for all and not just farmers or large producers. The middle guys, I would say the young guys like us are the ones who are not getting the benefit, who actually are working the most. And differential pricing point for CBG is something which we can try and focus on. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Varun. Thank you so much. And I think this is probably the right time for us to move to India as a global supply chain. And while we are trying to create a very, very large supply chain for domestic opportunity, investments which are being made in this effort can actually lead to a significantly reliable supply chain which could be created for a global opportunity. Once again, I think you guys are trying to do exactly that. What's your vision vis-a-vis India?
Right. So I see more and more synchronization across various policies, especially which also promote export as well as take cognizance of the true nature of this global supply chain. So essentially today when we talk about feedstocks and the potential of feedstocks, we also at the other end of the spectrum look at what is the available capacities which are able to convert these feedstocks into sustainable aviation fuel, which will go towards meeting the mandates that we are already proposing today. So I think I see a lot of congruency coming across, a lot of recognition coming across the various government departments to understand that today the need of the hour is to be able to take advantage of existing capacities that have been set up all across, so that it makes this whole sector attractive enough so that it can attract more investments, it can attract more players into this domain and give most of them a sustainable outlook into the future. Having said that, that is one. So the other aspect that I see is, of course, which is very common across the domestic and the international aspect of it, aspect of feedstocks as well, is the part on looking at how we can better optimize the logistics aspect of supply chains. So, so Mr. Sajdev had pointed out very, rightly today, a lot of the feedstocks that operate in India work on a non-bulk basis because of essentially the dynamics of the sector. There are smaller farm players, there are small aggregators who are not able to sustain a bulk mode of logistics. But in order to make ourselves competitive, it's also important to look at how we optimize that part of our logistics supply chain. So we definitely are looking forward to take advantage of the bulking aspect that happens in the domestic aspect, so that we can compete and be an attractive option when it comes to global feedstock pools as well.
Thank you very much, Ashank. Thanks a lot. And I think the point that Amit, you made at the beginning, which is converting this to a bulk supply chain and steps that one needs to take around that. What would be your organization's outlook and work towards making that happen?
I think the first thing that needs to happen is to move, if it is possible, to move corn from a food grain crop designated as an industrial crop. I think that's very important. India uses only, of the total production, only 2 million metric tons of corn is used for food. Rest all is industrial, be it poultry, be it starch, ethanol, or any other crop, any other things that we are using for. So it needs to move in that direction. I think that's very, very important. Number two is to make new varieties that will give more ethanol for us. Indian corn gives us 380 liters of ethanol per metric ton. US corn gives us 443 million liters of ethanol per metric ton. Why that? So that is important. That is there because we have a different variety of corn that is used in India. It's hard endosperm corn that is used in India, which is for food purposes. US is soft endosperm. I think we have to move away from making Indian corn as food only.
Thank you so much.
That's very important.
Thank you so much.
Once that happens, things will change.
Thank you so much. I think we have had a variety of thoughts shared, leading from policy to productivity to making sure that we become globally competitive. I'm sure the audience has had interesting food for thought as the panelists discuss this. I once again want to thank the panelists who participated in the discussion. We are now awaiting the minister's arrival, so we probably just in time, 11 o'clock was supposed to be the closure. So thank you very much once again, the panelists as well as the audience, and we would like to conclude this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you everyone for this insightful discussion. May I request all the panelists to please step forward for a group photograph? Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start with the ministerial session with Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India. In a few minutes from now, I request you all to kindly be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you all to please be seated. We are soon going to start with our ministerial session. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you to kindly be seated. It is my pleasure to announce that Honorable Minister, along with our other guests, have arrived. Yeah, sure. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our esteemed guests on the stage, please. We welcome Mr. Tarun Swane, Co-Chairman, CI Committee of Bioenergy and Vice Chairman, Triveni Engineering, Mr. Sanjeev Chopra, Co-Chairman, CI Committee on Bioenergy and CEO, Managing Director, Praj Industries Limited, His Excellency Mr. Kenneth Felix Hekzinski Nobrega, Ambassador Embassy of Federal Republic of Brazil, and Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India. A round of applause, please, for our honorable guests. Ladies and gentlemen, this session will discuss the impact of biofuels on economic growth and the opportunities they create for entrepreneurship and enhancing global partnerships. Without taking any time further, may I now invite Mr. Tarun Swane, Co-Chairman, CII Committee on Bioenergy and Vice Chairman, Triveni Engineering, to please set the context and provide the industry perspective as well. Sir, the floor is yours, please.
Good morning, everybody. Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India. His Excellency, Mr. Kenneth Felix Hekzinski de Nobrega, Ambassador of the Federative Republic of Brazil. My friend and co-chair of the CII Committee on Bioenergy, Sanjeev Chopra, senior government officials, industry colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning again. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you again on this 12th CII Bioenergy Summit. Today's event marks a pivotal moment in India's bioenergy sector as we continue navigating the energy transition. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone for your participation and commitment in advancing the bioenergy agenda. I also extend my heartfelt thanks to the Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas for his continued support and active participation in the CII Bioenergy Summit. His unwavering commitment to advancing the bioenergy sector has been extraordinarily helpful in driving meaningful discussions and progress. And we deeply value the Minister's ongoing engagement with CII in this important initiative. Bioenergy has emerged as a critical element in the global renewable energy mix, offering sustainable, reliable, and economically viable solutions to addressing growing energy demands, while reducing the reliance on imported fossil fuels. Projected to represent 1/5 of the total energy supply in 2050, sustainable bioenergy is expected to continue playing a key role in decarbonization of all energy sectors and, by extension, the global economy. With the produced sustainable bioenergy, we can significantly expect a contribution to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Furthermore, it is only renewable energy sources that can remove CO2 from the atmosphere when combined with carbon capture and carbon storage. India stands as a pivotal player in the global energy landscape and is committed and ambitious targets towards our clean mandate. By 2030, as I mentioned, we expect 50% of our energy to come from renewables and achieve zero net emissions by 2070. Our progress has actually been truly remarkable. In August 2024, if we look at the ethanol blending program, an important part of this bioenergy agenda, our blending stood at a remarkable and historic number. As of September 1st, we have seen that over 16,000 PSU outlets out of the 82,000 are dispensing E20 ethanol. And we hope that as this new ethanol year comes underway, we're going to achieve even higher heights. We've already seen from the recently announced tender that we're expecting enormous quantums of ethanol and enormous participation, not just from the sugarcane ethanol sector, but also from the grain ethanol sector as well. Following the Honorable Prime Minister's push for a blend of E20 by 25-26, we are looking at a historic achievement, potentially even before that target. If we turn our attention now towards our agricultural strength and our biomass potential, India's agricultural backbone accounts for 18.2% of the country's GDP and employs over 43% of the population, which places us in a unique position to be able to harness bioenergy. Our agricultural waste, which includes residues such as paddy straw, sugarcane bagasse, maize, stopover, can efficiently be converted into ethanol and biogas. In fact, the session preceding this one, Honorable Minister, spoke really about the challenges that the supply chain faces today in terms of gathering biomass and the conversion, the safe conversion into bioenergy. And I think we've made huge inroads, because if I reflect upon the 11th summit, the last summit, I think the maturity of the ecosystem, and these were words that were echoed by you in your address to this gathering last year, we've taken that very, very seriously. And I think the investments that you've seen pan-country are a testament to that commitment. So by utilizing crop residues for bioenergy production, we're looking at processes and technologies across the board that actually weren't even envisaged a few years ago. We're looking at biochar production, pellet production, composting, a vast variety of different technologies that will allow us to really penetrate India's agricultural sector and add value like never before. Our commitment to achieving zero net energy emissions by 2070 is actually at the heart of this strategy. Beyond the domestic efforts, India is also collaborating at a global scale with initiatives like the Global Biofuels Alliance to intensify our use of sustainable biofuels. We have already achieved our commitment to 40% energy reduction from renewable sources, way ahead of the Paris Agreement of 2030, the target for 2030. Further, to align with a net zero pathway, biofuel production from new processing technologies needs to quintuple by 2030. And that can only happen by leveraging our agricultural and forest residue base. In addition, green hydrogen is going to play a critical role in decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors. And as India positions itself as a global hub for green hydrogen production and exports, we aim to meet the 5 million ton green energy demand by replacing grey hydrogen in the refineries and fertilizer sectors. And it is people in this room, sir, that will stand committed towards these targets. Sir, I will not dwell upon the other important schemes, including Satat and Gobardhan, that have added and invigorated a lot of people that are here today and are excited to hear about the prospects in terms of partnering in important government schemes. CII, sir, remains committed to fostering a collaborative dialogue between industry and policymakers and international stakeholders to accelerate biofuel adoption. We recognize the critical role that innovation and technology must play in biofuel production and adoption, and we aim to leverage the GBA as a platform for driving research and development initiatives, including supporting startups and fostering public-private partnerships that will accelerate the deployment of next-generation biofuels. As an apex association and a representative of Indian industry, CII would like to extend its complete support, sir, for the Global Biofuels Alliance. As we move forward for today's discussions, I believe that today will play a pivotal role in shaping our bioenergy policy's expectations for the year to come. It is essential that we continue to work together to unlock the future potential of our bioenergy sector. Our collective efforts to make India a greener bioenergy hub will propel us towards a much cleaner and energy secure future. I'm confident that today's deliberations will provide the insight and strategies necessary to fuel India's green growth, creating a sustainable and energy secure future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let me invite my friend and colleague, Sanjeev Chopra, to offer some words to the audience.
Good morning, distinguished guests, respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you all, and I welcome you to the 12th edition of the CII Bioenergy Summit. Where do I start? I would like first to, of course, extend a very, very special welcome to our chief guest and also the chief champion, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India. Many of us today will agree with my statement that we owe our positive energy in this room today to this one gentleman for the championing he has done for the cause of bioenergy in the country. Thank you, sir. Under your guidance, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has given a continuous support and leadership for pushing the cause of bioenergy agenda forward. I also extend a warm welcome to His Excellency Mr. Kenneth Felix de Norbega, Ambassador of Federative Republic of Brazil, and my colleague and co-chair on CII Committee of Bioenergy, Mr. Tarun Sani, CEO and Managing Director of Triveni Engineering Industries as well. It wasn't long back, and I can clearly recall at the beginning of the calendar year 2018, the question in front of all of us was, what is the future of ethanol? And in a short span of 6 years, we are now saying ethanol is the future. And that's a huge, huge journey that our country has undertaken. Today's summit is a key platform for shaping India's bioenergy future. My heartfelt thanks to you for participating in this very important dialogue here today. Bioenergy is no longer an alternative. It's now the way to be. It stands at the forefront of India's and many, many countries in the world's sustainable energy future. Our nation is blessed with vast agricultural resources, sun, and a community that is farm-oriented. Let's put it to the best use. We can convert, quote unquote, the waste to a great resource for our country, effectively harnessing different molecules, biogas, biofuels, biomass, and biopolymers. On a global scale, the biofuel demand is expected to grow. Just about 10 days ago, I was in Brazil for the G20 conference. And one clear message that I sort of gathered without exception was everyone is saying, one thing is clear, biofuel is set to grow and set to grow big. And this is not only for India, this is going to cut across several economies of the world. Several steps are taken for a journey to be completed. And we have seen and you should be in these forums to actually get this matter of pride. And sir, I can share with you what a matter of pride and joy it is for all of us from India when we talk about the E20 program and its success. There's almost a sense of disbelief for many countries saying, how could you pull this off in such a short time? And this is a clear example of when we all align to a cause, wonders can happen. Sustainable biomobility in India is a subject where we have just begun the journey. And as I keep joking with my colleagues, we started with moving people on a different form of alcohol. Then we started to move the vehicles on the road. Very soon we'll be flying airplanes and soon moving the ships as well. But all of this has common sustainability at its thread. The most important aspect, I think, for a growing economy like India and many others in the world is the fact that bioenergy creates jobs. And probably bioenergy is one area which creates jobs, particularly in rural areas. We expect that by year 2025, bioenergy would have created over 1 million jobs in year of 2025 in India alone. These jobs are not necessarily only for the skilled manpower, and I think this is very important. One thing is that we take the level of skills up, but we also include the masses which have not been privileged to have skills acquired for their growing up years, but even they get included and therefore improve their lifestyles. India launched under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi a very, very forward-looking policy, BioE3, just 2 weeks ago. The 3 E's of this policy, economy, employment, environment, actually encompass all. And if you really start to think, there are very few initiatives that I have seen where everything, all the aspects, the political, economical, social, environmental, all of them come together in such an aligned fashion. We are on course to achieve the 20% blending, and I can share with you with quote-unquote insider information from my company, we are absolutely on track to achieve 20%. There is absolutely no doubt about that. In fact, we are looking forward to higher blendings and higher usage of biofuels. Initiatives such as rollout of E100 fuels, the Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Yojana, the upcoming biorefineries at Banipat are all advancing the bioenergy agenda and will soon be joined by several other locations including Numaligarh, Bathinda and Bargarh in Orissa. The Global Biofuels Alliance is a great initiative that was launched last year under India's presidency at G20. And we believe that GBA will pave the way for establishing India as one of the leaders in the world in the map of bioenergy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's discuss all the ideas that we have today because these are the building blocks for our future generations. Our collective efforts in this room will be essential for realizing the full potential of the bioenergy sector. Together, we can establish India as a global leader in the bioenergy movement. Bioenergy movement will call for several collaborations, and Brazil is going to be a very, very important player in that, having led the way over the last 50 years in the world. Let us use this summit as an opportunity to forge new partnerships and alliances and chart a course forward for a greener, more prosperous and sustainable world. Thank you so much, and I welcome you once again, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Joshipura. I would now like to invite His Excellency, Mr. Kenneth Felix Hexinski Nobrega, Ambassador Embassy of the Federative Republic of Brazil, to present the special address to this August gathering, please. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Shri Hardip Singh Puri, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas of India, Mr. Tarun Shoney, Mr. Shishir Joshipura, Co-Chairman of CII Committee on Bioenergy, ladies and gentlemen, let me say I'm very pleased to take part in this CII Bioenergy Summit 2024. As we all know, bioenergy is one of the most prominent areas of bilateral cooperation between Brazil and India. Our two countries are expanding horizons for public and private collaboration on biofuels, driven by economic complementarity and a shared commitment to a carbon-free economy. We are doing so at a bilateral and at multilateral levels, such as the Global Biofuels Alliance, one of the many outstanding achievements of G20 Indian presidency. Thereby, I would like firstly to share with you some insights regarding the growing cooperation between Brazil and India on biofuels. Secondly, I would like to highlight two strategic developments that are taking place in Brazil in order to fuel the future in a sustainable way. I have been told that this morning there has been discussions on Brazil's successful experience on ethanol production and use of ethanol in mobility. In my intervention, I will speak about the future, foremost about the future. In the realm of bilateral cooperation, I highlight the recent visit of Honorable Minister Hadi Puri to Brazil 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, with the Brazilian Minister of Mines and Energy, Alexandre Silveira. And they had a very productive meeting, and two important joint declarations were issued. One focused on the bilateral cooperation in the energy sector, and the second one focused on biofuels and sustainable aviation fuels. Both documents underscore the growing bilateral relationship in the field of energy, as well as our shared commitment to address global challenges related to sustainability. They are also a natural result of our complementarities. Brazil bringing its success story as a highly competitive ethanol producer and as an example of implementation of sustainable mobility. India, with its vast agricultural resources, coupled with its technological base, and growing demand for cleaner energy. By pooling our resources, experience, and technology, we are expanding horizons for public and private bilateral partnerships. Bilateral cooperation has also been marked by how Brazil follows with great interest India's journey towards decarbonizing its economy while ensuring accelerated sustainable growth. India, of course, has showed remarkable progress in its journey, as I mentioned, towards decarbonizing the economy, including the domain of mobility, by consistently working to meet its emission targets. This commitment is evident in the nation's progressive policies and initiatives to reduce emissions and promote the exploitation of renewable energy sources. In this context, boosting the exchange of experience to reduce in reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, this will set an effective example of South-South cooperation in the global energy transition. When I mention setting an example, I also have in mind that the partnership between our two countries has been carried out against a background of increasing challenges, such as extreme weather events, such as events that happened Brazil in the last months, caused by climate change, that threatens our food security and our health systems, among other dire consequences. Indeed, a vision of a shared future brought us together to the groundbreaking Global Biofuels Alliance. As founding members of this remarkable initiative, Brazil and India emphasize the crucial role of the alliance, and how it plays in positioning biofuels as a key component of the global energy transition, contributing to environmental sustainability and to socio-economic growth. These times of transition we are going through towards a carbon-free economy require governments and the private sector to jointly define a strategy, both with a view to the long term, but also looking for viable short-term solutions. After all, the carbon dioxide we are emitting today will remain in the atmosphere for many years to come. Biofuels do provide viable short-term results, including for the Global South. For many Global South countries with tropical climates, bioenergy can be a cheaper solution and a more competitive pathway for achieving net zero faster. It also can have an immediate impact on the creation of jobs and income for rural populations, as well as on the decarbonization of several sectors of industry. For this reason, Brazil strongly welcome the Indian initiatives to launch the GBA because its potential can foster international technical cooperation. The current Brazilian G20 presidency is closely working with India and other members of the alliance to further advance its structure, governance, and activities. Tangible progress is underway. 10 days ago, let me remind that Brazil hosted the G20 Energy Transition Ministerial meeting. On that occasion, important principles were approved, and among them, I draw attention to the endorsement to invest in affordable and reliable solutions for just and inclusive energy transitions, and the implementation of secure and sustainable solutions. The Global Biofuels Alliance is not only in line with those specific principles, but also with the Ministerial Outcome Statement, which was also issued some 10 days ago. And this outcome statement supports G20 countries to triple renewable energy capacity and double the average annual rate by 2030. By carrying out such strategic approaches of the Global Biofuels Alliance and the G20, we are indeed paving the way for a better future for the generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now touch upon some very recent and groundbreaking developments in Brazil. As I mentioned, Brazil is a global leader in sugarcane production and production of ethanol, not only, by the way, from sugarcane. For corn is growing in its share of sugarcane ethanol productions in Brazil. Last week, President Lula enacted into law, a law which is known now as Fuel of the Future, the following provisions. This new law sets several programs with a view to foster research, production, selling, and use of sustainable fuels, such as biofuel, biomethane, and sustainable aviation fuel. The law also provides for an increase from 27 to up to 35% of ethanol blend to gasoline, and from 14 up to 20% of the biodiesel blend to diesel by 2030. The projected increase will be achieved through the recovery of degraded agricultural areas. There is a program in Brazil which focuses on recuperating degraded areas. These measures will further consolidate the decarbonization of the Brazilian transport and mobility metrics. In doing so, Brazil brings together the public and the private sector in the search for short-term and long-term solutions to reduce carbon dioxide emissions through biofuels. The second initiative I would like to mention was launched last August in Brazil. It is the so-called Pact for Ecological Transformation, which comprises joint action by the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, and focusing on the environmental agenda. This pact is one of a kind. As President Lula stressed, it is aimed to be a permanent, long-term state policy. It therefore presents administrative, legal, and judicial measures to meet the challenges posed by energy transition, including in connection with land use planning. A joint management committee will monitor the commitment of the three branches of our democratic system, executive, legislative, and judicial, of course. And the focus is on mitigation and adaptation to climate change, bioenergy, and food security. These two initiatives, along with their regulatory framework, will play a central role in the attraction of private investments to green financing in the years to come. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Brazil is engaged to expanding horizons with innovation and diversification of renewable energy strategies, using a technological neutral approach. I should have mentioned that before. Nevertheless, based on lessons learned and on successful experiences, Brazil is aware that only with reliable, trusted partners, it becomes possible to secure sustainable green growth goals. We therefore count on India and on its remarkable potential to make a difference in the emerging energy transition ecosystem. With India, Brazil is ready for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have with us Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India, as our guest of honor today. I request Honorable Minister to kindly present his address. Sir.
Thank you very much. If you permit, I will address you in an interactive mode. First of all, I want to thank my friend, Ambassador Nobrega, whose cooperation and solid support we have had the privilege of receiving, as indeed of his predecessor, to further India's biofuel, green energy transition. And I think that is an ongoing process, and a process whose potential, I think, still remains to be discovered. Thank you very much, Tarunji and Shishirji, for addressing us. I had the privilege last year also of being with you in a similar session when the theme was Energy Transition Solutions for a Sustainable Tomorrow. Today, you might ask, and I know I have some friends there on a table who keep asking what is new. I want to start by addressing one or two affectionate remarks to them. You could ask, why do I keep coming to such events? Well, one is that I happen to be Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, and I think this ministry, my ministry, has the privilege of dealing with several very crucial segments, not only of the trilemma of availability, affordability, but most important, sustainability, the green transition. If our OMCs, who have, I think, 75,000 retail stations throughout the country, if there is a shortage of energy at any one of them for even a few hours, our social media goes on fire. And some of that fire is reserved for adjectives which are not describable in a polite setting like this. And I'm often at the receiving end of those. But the fact that I've been relatively insulated from that kind of comment is because they have ensured, they and the private sector retailers by and large, have ensured that in the last 2 or 3 years, there has been no shortage felt anywhere. I mean, there could be a natural occurrence, excess water, difficulties of transportation, but even then, our colleagues have carried gas cylinders, repaired pipelines, all in real time. On affordability, we have allowed not only the market to make a determination as to what can be carried, but there has been a conscious attempt by the government, particularly the Honorable Prime Minister, to make sure that the consumer is insulated from the turbulence in global markets. That becomes very necessary when you look at the fact that our import dependence for crude is very high still. In spite of the fact that we are doing very well in E&P, we are doing very well in enhancing the production from existing stock, etc. But I think when it comes to green energy, I think we have a very good story to tell. Not that we don't have a good story to tell elsewhere, but since this session is on green energy and the Biofuels Alliance, I'll spend a few minutes in context setting. I read a report in a respectable South Indian newspaper, which is a national newspaper, highly respectable, that our biofuels policy has been characterized by confusion. And the gentleman who wrote it, I don't know which side of the bed he got out of on the morning that he wrote it, he says, we have been constantly revising our targets. Now, I got up in the morning and I said, maybe my advancing years and failing eyesight, I'm reading something wrong. Yes, we have been changing goalposts, as he says, but we've been changing goalposts to produce more and more and get it done faster. I mean, when I was ambassador to Brazil, a country which I have great admiration for many reasons, but the biofuel story is one of the most important parts of that collaboration. We have many others. With all the will in the world, the government till 2014, with all the will in the world, they could not produce biofuel blending more than 1.5%. We had set a target then of 10% blending, 5% blending in 10 of our states and union territories. Only in 10 of our states and union territories. We couldn't even do that. So when this gentleman writes about our revising targets, well, yes, I think my friend Shishir put it beautifully. He said in 2018, it was a different world. In 2018, we were not sure of what we were doing. We had started the biofuels blending program, but we had still some uncertainty, some anxiety. So why do I attend these meetings every year? Not because I like to repeat myself, because I think I need to point out the nuances. The Honorable Prime Minister, to whom I give total credit for the biofuels. It's very easy for all of you guys to say nice things about me, and all of you have said nice things. The ambassador said nice things. Tarun's since he was much younger, he has been my friend. Shishir has become my friend. You say nice things about me. But the fact is, I only joined this ministry 3 years ago. This program predates my association with the ministry. And the Prime Minister set a target of 10% blending of biofuels by November 2022. That's a fact. It's recorded. And after that experience of not being able to do more than 1.5%, we today had a situation that we'd completed 10% blending 5 months in advance. So yes, there's no confusion. There's absolutely single-minded, forward-looking trajectory, which is what? You see, if you are not doing something, you can have a desire for doing something. I see many of my young friends who are entrepreneurs sitting here. You're young, you're bright, you want to start something, you go and raise money in the market, a venture capitalist, you have a good idea, it's evaluated by the banks, by the venture capitalists. But till you've done it, you're not sure. So once we got that confidence that we can do 10% and we did it before time, we revised the target again. We said we had committed to 20% blending by 2030. We will bring that forward by 5 years and complete it by ethanol blending year 2025, which is by October. Now, is there confusion in this, or is there single-minded this thing? I think anyone who makes a comment like that, I'm not singling out the name, but everybody knows whom I'm talking about, should literally go and do a little bit of homework. I mean, I can understand somebody in social media posting whatever they like. Minister's no good. When I said the hockey team has done very well, they said, yeah, but what about X, Y, and Z? I mean, no relationship. I can have a discussion with you on X, Y, Z also. No, so I'm coming to the point that today, unlike even last year, it's an even better story. Last year when we met, I think, at around the same time, I was sure about 20%. Last year, I was sure about that we'll receive 20% because unlike most of you, I monitor targets like what is the international price of oil, what is happening, UP is supposed to set up 100 plants, CBG, kya ho raha hai, etc. And not that the reports coming. But this year, I can tell you, if you look at the September figures, we've done what? 16.9% or something, 16.5%. My God. And I don't know, my friend here was telling me, Tarun was telling me, कि अगला भी tender, etc., it's already, out and subscribed. So today, I don't agonize about 20% at all. I mean, barring some unforeseen occurrence here or there, we will blend 20%. I don't agonize about availability of feedstock. You know, in a large country like India, you can have any kind of problem anywhere. But does your policy have the inherent responsiveness to shift when you face a problem? You're facing an impediment, you go around it. This is the classic story of, ethanol blending based on one feed and a shift from there to another feed where you went from 0 to what? 39%. And by the way, Master Shishir was telling me just now that he's setting up 5 ethanol plants in Brazil. So I said, are you sure? Why would Brazil is a way leader? And says, no, but we have set up the first and we are doing so and so. Because the Brazilian experience is in one feed. He has experience here doing another feed. But I would be delighted to have Brazilians setting up plants here, investment coming from there. This is the story of international biofuels collaboration. An entrepreneur in Ahmedabad studied the global map, and he discovered that unlike India, some of the countries on a large continent do not have the facility of clean cooking gas. And I'll come to that in a minute. That's part of the story. We supply clean cooking gas to the beneficiaries of our Ujjwala scheme for as little as 5 or 6 cents in a day. And we supply clean cooking gas for non-beneficiaries, to normal people, for as little as 15 cents in a day. If you look at the fact that you're also supplying 800 million people, 80 crore people, 3 meals of dry ration in a day, which is continuing since the pandemic. You do a dry ration plus you're providing very, very reasonably priced clean cooking fuel. I mean, what more can you say? And then we talk about characterizations of states being right and left. I mean, I'm amazed sometimes. Today, the biofuel story is galloping. Today, I can recall in 2006 when I was appointed ambassador to Brazil, my first interaction, one of the first interactions in Sao Paulo was with the then president of Unica, a brilliant man. And he told me in a first meeting, Ambassador, if you can get India to join the biofuel story. I was a bit sheepish, because in 2006, we didn't even have that 1.5% blending. In 2006, we were setting targets, I was writing letters, I was telling people do it. So much so that when I used to come from Brasilia to Delhi, a lot of friends in government and others saw me coming and said, here comes ethanol. Because I'm pushing the story from there. But it's a fact. In 2014, when the Honorable Prime Minister took over, what did he do? He completely changed the ecosystem. Today, I don't worry about if somebody wants to set a very high procurement price for, say, one particular feed, and people crib that this is too high. Very good, the market will take care of it. They won't go there. They'll go to another feed. Market, technology, and constructive, benign government policy. These are the 3 things which are required, and I think you have them in abundance here. As I said, the full credit for this kind of transformation goes to the Honorable Prime Minister. We have faced many roadblocks. When I was in Brazil between 2006 and 8, I had visiting Indian ministers saying, "Kyun itna biofuel kare? Aapko pata hai, isme aapke yahan food ki problem ho jayegi." I should tell them even then, I said, look, we are not dealing with what you think we are dealing with. And I'll come to the size of the biofuels market in a minute, but I want to give you one statistic which I think sums up, some statistics which sum up where we stand. The foreign exchange saving from 2014 to 24 these are figures up to only August, was 1 crore, no, 1,000, what is 1,06,072 crores just over that 10-year period. 1,06,000 crores. The carbon dioxide emissions lowered during that period 544 lakh metric tons. The crude oil substitution achieved during that period 181 lakh metric tons. The amount paid to distillers by OMCs 1,50,000, no, 1,50,097 crores. And amount paid to farmers, to me that's the most important. All those guys who throw this, you can't do this because it will affect this economy, the farmers earned 90,059 crores. These are the real facts. And let me tell you, we still haven't got to, I want to, by the way, when I was in Brazil, Ambassador, your minister and Petrobras and all the excellent meetings that you arranged for me, they told me that you would be moving from 27% to 35% blending. And today you announced that you've already done it in the basic fuel. Well, I'm not in a position to make an announcement, but I can tell you there are a lot of people in the government of India, including me, who are already talking about preparing a roadmap for the post 20% blending after 2025. We're already talking about it. I talked about the entrepreneur who looked at the world map, and I think I got digressed after that. He saw that that continent didn't have LPGs. So what he did was he took a manufacturing unit in India, produced 1 million cooktops, exported them to that country, and started importing 93-octane ethanol from there. And there is another story there. This is what I call Global Biofuels Alliance cooperation. So what the president of Unica told me then, and which bears recollection, that if India joins the story, you would have Brazil, United States, and India, 3 large countries with an ability to produce, consume, and also to trade in ethanol. And I think that is the real story. I'm not looking for my prepared comments, but yes, there's some things I want to share with you. Approximately 25% of the increase in demand globally over the next 2 decades on energy is likely to come from India. These are figures which a lot of international agencies have put out. The question that arises is, how much of that increase in demand are we able to meet from cleaner fuels, and how much by traditional fossil fuels? Now, you don't need to address this issue only in terms of philosophy and desirability, because I think anyone who has a concern for the planet would want the entire increase to come from biofuels, clearly. But then you need to produce that capacity. Why am I mentioning this figure? Because during my visit to Brazil, one of the most fascinating discussions I had with many of your companies and others was Brazil's plans for producing sustainable aviation fuel in large quantities. Now, if you look around the world and look at what is happening in the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, on Corsair, whatever that body is called, and you look at the chatter, you know, if you are in the business of listening into what people are saying, then there's a lot of chatter on SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. Why is there? Some of it is being encouraged because aviation consumes a very large amount of fuel, what we call aviation turbine fuel. But more important, there is now talk of norm setting by the European Union. And by the norm setting, it means that they would prescribe that by a particular year, 5% of all sustainable aviation fuel, 5% of all aviation fuel would have to be sustainable in a blending. How will you implement it? There are different ideas floating around. One idea which I think has its genesis or root somewhere in Singapore with a lot of bright people working on it, is that when you buy a ticket, there will be a particular charge, minimal, but it will be added to the ticket. That will be a kind of a green charge, and that will then be transferable. I'm not going to take up because I'm fascinated by it and I can go on talking and interacting with you on that. I ask myself a simple question. When I sit in Europe, and a lot of work on sustainable aviation fuel is being done by highly industrialized countries in the West, small population, very high per capita income, where they are doing work on sustainable aviation fuel. But much before this chatter was heard, I had, during the course of a demonstration flight which was received from Pune to Delhi, which had 1% sustainable aviation fuel blending, it was an AirAsia flight, when we discovered that to have a 1% mandatory blending, we needed 14 crore liters, if memory serves me right. Huh? Correct, no? 14 crore. And I said to myself, I'm sitting there without any approval from anybody, but I did some forward thinking. Knowing fully well what's happening in the world, I decided to utilize that opportunity, which I think was at the Indira Gandhi International Airport, where you had this AirAsia flight, you had all the airline people, you had my friend Shishir, a lot of people there. And I said, we will start and aim at 1% blending by 2027, 2% blending by 2028, 3% blending by 2029. I'm surprised nobody asked me, where did you pick these figures out from? It's become part of the accepted thing. Because it's a target which I set as the Minister for Sustainable Fuel Production, and it was accepted. Sometimes ministers make statements and there is a volley of, eruption. I tried to avoid those situations. I tested the waters. And I'm very happy to tell you, Tarun, last week, I had the privilege of co-chairing a meeting on sustainable aviation fuel, which had all our airlines. All our airlines means the bigger users. You had Air India, you had Indigo, you had representatives of the Environment Ministry, you had representatives of the Food Processing Ministry, my secretary, Petroleum and Natural Gas Secretary was there, a huge hall full. And we discussed specifics on how to go forward. Well, there were still some people turning around and saying, well, not in that meeting, another one, I said, no, but we have to do this, we are difficult. Look, there will be, if not vested interests, and I'm choosing my words carefully, there are people with set mindsets. A lot of us in the room, if you have, say, 500 people in a room, there will be a certain percent who will say, ho hi nahi sakta. When I became ambassador to Brazil, and I got fascinated by the biofuel story, I had a very senior officer who was then, I think, CG in Sao Paulo, and he told me कि आप ऐसी बात कर रहे हैं, ये तो बहुत लोगों ने कोशिश किया तो हो ही नहीं सकता. Entirely possible. But that does not absolve the champions of industry here, sitting here, Paraj Industries sitting there, or people like the ambassador and me who are in the world of diplomacy or politics, of not trying. And once the narrative sets in and there is a wider acceptance of the desirability of a thing, you will find things are happening much faster. My friend Tarun, whilst we were discussing this, he told me ki E100, you brought up the issue of E100. And I told him that E100 as a fuel is already being retailed in 400 of our outlets in 4 states. The oil marketing companies assure me that they can scale it up. So now the question arises, why are we retailing E100 fuel if there are no takers? No, it's like the chicken and egg story. I can't convince the automobile manufacturers of sending E85 vehicles because he'll turn around saying there's no fuel. But I had no difficulty in convincing the OMCs to manufacture E100. We had a very far-sighted visionary chairman of Indian Oil. When I had a chat with him, Gadkari ji, within 2 minutes he agreed. Because if you have a fuel like E100 available, and if you are doing, say, using a tractor, you will be tempted to go there and get that tractor converted. And the marketplace and technology will take care of the rest. I don't want to go into greater details of what discussions we've had with the automobile manufacturers and others. Why does Shishir go to Brazil and produce a plant? Because the Brazilians have one kind of experience, which is world leading, but there may be something he's doing that he still has economic opportunity for. And why should we be shy of bringing in, where my real story, and we have got it done only partly, is to produce ethanol from second generation, which is from agricultural waste, broken food grain, third generation from industrial gases, from bamboo. I think the first plant is coming up in another month or so. So these are the changes which are taking place on the ground. Now, how much is the market worth? I had some figure somewhere here. It says the difficulty of not using your prescribed text. But by the way, should release this, a lot of good material there. But I think the market today should be about $45 billion, biofuel market. It is expected to grow by 2050 to $125 billion. And if you get into your net zero issue, it could be even higher. So the limited point I'm making is, and by the way, I don't think this takes into account the sustainable aviation fuel equation at all. Because if you go for 5% mandatory blending of SAF in pursuance of a mandate, you will show that this will also gallop much further. I want to come to the green hydrogen story for a few minutes because I think these are all ultimately interlinked. Yes, as per International Energy Agency, there will be a 3.5 to 5 times biofuels growth potential by 2050 due to net zero targets, creating a huge... I wanted to cite that figure. I mean, where am I getting that figure? It's an IEA figure. India, with a projected agro-biomass power potential exceeding 35 gigawatts by 2030, stands poised to significantly augment India's energy landscape. We have more than 750 million metric tons of available biomass from crops, with around 2/3 of the total biomass produced being used for domestic purposes and other purposes like cattle feeding and compost fertilizer. This is, I think, figure is very important to realize where we need to take this discussion further to. I'm talking about the work which is being done by our OMCs in a consultation with the states. I want to conclude but before I conclude, I want to talk about green hydrogen. Today, I think India has clearly demonstrated an ability to bring the cost per unit of clean solar energy down from 25 cents a unit to about 3 cents or so. Just about every electrolyzer manufacturer in the world is today participating in India. Not only because we offer that 19,700 crores of productivity-linked incentive, which the Honorable Prime Minister had approved, the Cabinet approved some time ago, but also because there is some inherent advantage in the green hydrogen story in India. Because the gas does not lend itself to transportation, so green hydrogen typically succeeds where there is local demand, local production, and local consumption. And again, I think countries like Brazil and India naturally suggest themselves for sustainable aviation fuel production, not only for them, but for other countries. Equally, countries similarly placed as India lend themselves as particularly attractive destinations for the production of green hydrogen. Is that happening? My response to you and my submission to you is it is happening at a pace which people are not able to even comprehend. We do a monthly meeting, I'm sorry, sometimes it takes longer, where we get all the captains of industry, other technology startups, etc., in order to see what is happening on the green hydrogen thing. I'm very happy finally, everybody seems to have, most of us have our act together. We are now setting targets for that transition. We are floating tenders to achieve that. The figures may appear in the start of the process somewhat modest. I'm going by our set target of by 2030 is 5 million metric tons. But at the end of the day, the green hydrogen story, like the biofuel story, is ultimately dependent on cost. My position is very clear. If you make the biofuel so expensive that people are not willing to make the transition for sustainability because it becomes unaffordable, then you have a problem. Equally in biofuels and green hydrogen, the cost becomes therefore crucial. Today, people will tell you that we can produce it at this cost, that cost. I take all those assessments with not a pinch, but a bag full of salt. Because if you can actually bring it down from the $5 or plus that it is currently there, that is $5 per kilo, you will get a situation where at $2.50, the $150 billion that you are spending on the import bill on fossil fuels, there will be a massive public pressure to shift that into green hydrogen production. And I think that is the real story. And not the story about, the report I read, which is, I think, completely bizarre. Look, when we started our agriculture and process, we were not unmindful of how to do it. But you are looking at that point of time with the options available. Today, if pump storage plants, which have already succeeded, if they catch on, where you will be able to take water to a particular height, produce clean electricity, and then you have a storage facility on site so that you can utilize the energy when the benefits of nature are not available to you, that is the answer. And the kind of stories I hear now talking to youngsters in terms of technological upgrades, what they are doing on this sector, fills me, again, I'm very cautious with words, with not just reasonable confidence, much more than reasonable confidence, that the biofuel story, that the green energy transition, the green hydrogen story is not only taking off, but taking off very well. And the Global Biofuels Alliance, under which sub-item that we are having this discussion, I think is destined in times to come to do great things. We signed, I think, the headquarters agreement last week. And I think when you meet under the very far-sighted Brazilian presidency of the G20 next month, we would have, because Brazil is the linear progenitor, that is where the biofuel story started. So I'm sure this Biofuels Alliance will receive further impetus, and more young entrepreneurs will see the opportunities that this green energy sector has to offer for the larger good of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We thank all the speakers for their insightful addresses. I request all the dignitaries to kindly pose for a group photograph.
There you are.